Today we're going to be solving quadratic equations. So solving quadratic equations involves finding the x-intercepts of our equation. And we also have the x-intercepts, zero, solutions, and roots are all the same. So let's find our x-intercepts for graphing the following equations. So if we plug in 0, so 0 squared is 0, so we have a negative 4. 1 squared is 1, and 1 minus 4 excuse me, is negative 3. 2 squared is 4, and 4 minus 4 is 0. 3 squared is 9. 9 minus 4 is 5. So if we graph these, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're at 0, negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, negative 3, 2, 0, and 3, 5. So if we reflect our points to get our parabola, here is our first quadratic, and our x-intercepts, where it crosses the x-axis, are at 2 and negative 2. So let's take a look at our second one. If we do 0, 0 squared is 0, times by negative 1 is still 0, plus 2. 1 squared is 1, times by a negative 1, so we have negative 1 plus 2 is a positive 1. 2 squared is 4, times by a negative 1 is a negative 4, so negative 4 plus 2 is a negative 2. 3 squared is 9, times by a negative 1 is a negative 9, plus 2 is negative 7. So we can graph at 0, 2, 1, 1, 2, negative 2, and 3, negative 7, which is down off the graph. So if I reflect over to get my quadratic, here, the way we're doing it, our x-intercepts, we don't have exacts, so we're going to say their x-intercept is greater than 1, but it's less than 2, and it's also greater than negative 2, but less than a negative 1. So our last one's 0. So 0 squared is 0, plus 3 is 3. 1 squared is 1, plus 3 is 4. 2 squared is 4, plus 3 is 7. 3 squared is 9, plus 3 is 12. So if we graph 0, 3, 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, oops, 3, 4, and then 4, 7. Reflect for our parabola. Here we have no x-intercepts, so we have no solution. Now let's look at solving the quadratic algebraically. So if you notice, we're working with the same equations. So now we're going to do with solving. So we want 0 equals x squared minus 4. So we can add 4 to both sides. So 4 equals x squared. So we can square root to get rid of our square. So the square root of 4 is 2, which equals x. But what we need to make sure is that when we do the square root, we have two answers. We have a positive and a negative. Because if we take 2 times 2, we're going to equal 4. And a negative 2 times a negative 2 is also a positive 4. So we have two solutions. Which if we look up here, same thing. Here, so we have to take 0 equals negative x squared plus 2. Subtract negative 2 to both sides. Or sorry, subtract 2. So negative 2 equals negative x squared. Divide both sides by a negative 1. So positive 2 equals x squared. Square root, so x equals square rooting again, so we have a positive and a negative. 1.1 and 41/100ths. But if we look up here, it's between 1 and 2, and it's also between negative 2 and negative 1. So then our third one. 0 equals x squared plus 3. Subtract 3. So negative 3 equals x squared. Now when we square root this, there's going to be no solution, because there's no way we can take one number, multiply itself to get a negative number, because a positive times a positive is a positive, and a negative times a negative is a negative. So there's no way we can end up with a negative number. So looking at our solutions versus our graphs, what do we notice about the x-intercepts in the algebraic solutions? They are the same. They are. So let's continue practicing. So we can subtract 6 to both sides. So x squared equals negative 6. Square root both sides. There's going to be no solution because we cannot square root a negative number. So here if we add 1/4 times x squared equals positive 1. So now if I multiply by the reciprocal, 4 over 1. X squared equals 4. Square root. X is going to equal, remember we can square it, we're going to end up with a plus and a negative 2. And lastly, minus 3 to both sides. So 2x squared equals 0. Divide both sides by 2. X squared equals 0. And the square root of 0 is 0. So when we square root a negative number, it will always be no solutions. When we're square rooting a positive number, we're always going to end up with 2 solutions, one positive and one negative. And when we square root a 0, we'll always end up with one real solution, which is 0. Let's continue solving. So here we want to add 441 to both sides. So x squared equals 441. So then from here, we're going to square root both sides. So x equals, since it's a positive, we're going to have 2 solutions. One's going to be positive, one negative, and it's 21. Here we should divide both sides by 4, because right now we're multiplying. So x squared equals, well, 25 over 4 can't reduce, so we're going to leave it as 25/4. So when we square root these, we're square rooting 25 and we're square rooting 4. It's still a positive, so I'm going to end up with 2 solutions, a positive and a negative. But I know the square root of 25 equals 5, and the square root of 4 equals 2. So x equals a positive 5/2 as well as a negative 5/2. So last one, let's add 24. So 6x squared equals 24. Divide both sides by 6. X squared equals a positive 4. So when we square root both sides, 4 is positive, so we're going to end up with 2 solutions, a positive and a negative, and our answer is 2. So let's suppose a person is riding in a hot air balloon 144 feet above the ground. He drops an apple. The height of the apple above the ground is given by the formula h equals negative 16t squared plus 144, where h is the height in feet and t is the time in seconds. We want to know the height of the apple after it's been in the air for 1 second as well as 2 seconds. So if we want to know the height after 1 second, we take our equation and replace t with 1, since that's our time, and add 144. So if we take negative 16 times the quantity of 1 squared plus 144, it's going to be 120 feet high in the air. So to find the height after 2 seconds, we're going to replace our t, our time, with 2 seconds, square it, plus 144. So negative 16 times by the quantity of 2 squared plus 144, the apple after 2 seconds is 80 feet in the air. So for B, when will the apple hit the ground? We want to show our work. So if the apple's hitting the ground, it means it's 0 feet above. So 0 feet means we're working with h. So we're replacing our h with 0. And we don't know how long it's taken, so we're going to leave t in our equation, and we're going to solve for it. So we can subtract 144 to both sides. So negative 144 equals a negative 16t squared. divide both sides by negative 16. So a positive 9 equals t squared. So our last step would be to square root both sides. So t equals a positive 3 or a negative 3. So let's graph this situation. So first of all, this is our time in seconds, and this is our height in feet. So after 1 second, it's 128 feet high. After 2 seconds, it's 80 feet in the air. And we know here at 0 feet, it took 3 seconds. If you notice, we had two solutions. One was positive and one was negative. But we can't have negative 3 as a solution because that means we'd have negative time, and we can't have negative time. So we can only say that it took 3 seconds for it to land. Also, we can get the vertex. We know the apple originally started at 144 feet.